Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It's me, and today I want to dive into something that I've been thinking about and accidentally hinting at for a little while now, and that's the real problem with Tears of the Kingdom. If you've watched many of my past videos, you might have theories about what I'm going to say in this video. If you've seen my series comparing Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom and how they each tackle different game elements differently, then you might think that I'm going to point out some way in which Tears fell short of Breath of the Wild. But in reality, I think the exact opposite is true. The problem with Tears of the Kingdom wasn't the ways in which it made changes from its predecessor that fell short. It was the decision to not make enough changes in the first place. Now, I'm not saying anything new here. I'm not even remotely the first person to have said this. This point has been made by people that are either smarter than me or have wasted more of their lives playing these games, or in some cases both of these things. So maybe it's pointless to throw my 2 cents in, but I just want to talk about why this bothers me. And anyone who watches this channel knows that I do like Tears of the Kingdom. I may prefer Breath of the Wild. In fact, Breath of the Wild is quickly becoming a contender for my favorite game of all time, but Tears is really good too, a solid 9 out of 10 in my book. But there's too much overlap with the prior game for me to say that it's a unique experience. Plenty of people have said that Tears of the Kingdom feels like glorified DLC content, and while I don't fully agree, there's a reason that people feel that way. A lot of Tears of the Kingdom is just the same stuff as Breath of the Wild with the gimmicks changed. And it's no wonder, since a lot of Tears of the Kingdom's fundamental ideas were first put into code with the intention of being DLC for Breath of the Wild. So even though Tears of the Kingdom clearly ascends above the title of glorified DLC, it does still have some of that feel to it because that is what it initially was before Nintendo decided to split it into a new game. Compare Breath of the Wild to its predecessor, Skyward Sword. The two have some similarities, but they aren't even remotely recognizable as the same game. The same can be said for Skyward Sword's predecessor, Twilight Princess. For as many repeated ideas as there are in the various Legends of Zelda, every game has its own unique combination of gameplay style and aesthetic choices, except Tears of the Kingdom. So Tears of the Kingdom's problem isn't that it made bad changes from Breath of the Wild, it's that it didn't make enough changes. It's become derivative. I would forgive a number of bad changes if Tears was a truly unique game. But it's not. It's Breath of the Wild with better boss fights and Bad Piggies 3D added in. I don't have to tell you that better boss fights is a good thing, or that adding Bad Piggies into an open world game is a glorious idea. The problem is that they stopped there. They really needed to keep going. The funny thing is that if you played Tears of the Kingdom but didn't play Breath of the Wild, this whole thing isn't even a problem for you. This is only an issue for people who have already played the prior game. I find it really ironic that the people that are experiencing this problem are the Zelda fans that have played all the games, and that the people who can get the absolute most out of Tears of the Kingdom are the people who have never touched this franchise, or at least haven't touched it since 2016. Another funny thing about this is that this isn't a problem that makes Tears of the Kingdom worse. It's a problem that makes whichever game you've played second worst. If you played Tears of the Kingdom worst, you won't run into this problem until you play Breath of the Wild, and then you'll probably ascribe this problem to Breath of the Wild instead of to Tears of the Kingdom. But the vast majority of us either played Breath of the Wild first or didn't play Breath of the Wild at all. So we have this one group that's really criticizing Tears of the Kingdom a lot and another that's praising it because one group went in already having experienced almost all of this and the other group hadn't. One of the big byproducts of this repetition is a loss of a sense of wonder. Tears of the Kingdom uses an almost identical overworld map to Breath of the Wild, and despite the regional additions of the Depths and the Sky Islands, most of the game still takes place on Hyrule's surface. And we've already seen Hyrule like this for years now. Any sense of excitement for cresting a mountain and seeing a brand new region is gone, because we've already seen it all in Breath of the Wild. This robs the game of the strong sense of exploration and wonder that Breath of the Wild had. Another thing that bothers me is how clearly Tears of the Kingdom just lifted the base code from Breath of the Wild. Maybe this is just a me problem, but the games feel identical in how you move, how you climb, how you do most of your fighting. Sure, the tools at your disposal are different, but parrying an attack or swinging a two-handed sword feels mechanically identical between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. So even if there are some big changes between these games, I can't shake the feeling that it's just the same game with some added-in stuff. Also, there's a lot of stuff repeated in Tears of the Kingdom that had almost no reason to be repeated, like the fact that the 4 regional phenomena quests in the main quest line in Tears of the Kingdom map almost identically to the 4 Divine Beast quests in the Breath of the Wild main quest line. You go to the same 4 places, you go on a short quest, you go through a short dungeon, and you fight a boss. Did it really have to be the same 4 locations, all with the same quest format as before? Not really, it didn't have to. There's other towns that this kind of quest could have taken place in that otherwise have very little story relevance in Tears of the Kingdom, such as Hiteno, Lurelin, or Terrytown. It's not like this was a financial constraint or a time problem. They just chose to do this the exact same way. This explains a lot about why people are complaining that they're already bored with Tears of the Kingdom. Plenty of people aren't bored, and you may be one of them, but there's a reason that a lot of people feel this way, and why people are already hyperfixating on the next Zelda game, despite the fact that it probably won't be out for at least 3 years, if not much longer. Breath of the Wild was a game that a lot of people played for half a decade without getting bored. Breath of the Wild was that kind of game that a lot of people just got lost in for years, but when they jumped into Tears of the Kingdom, they hoped it would have the same longevity. But with how much recycling was done in Tears of the Kingdom, that was never going to be the case. There is new content in Tears of the Kingdom, and it's mostly good content, but the rest is just repeating the motions from the last game. From the overworld being the same, to the main questline taking on the same format, to the basics of movement and combat being virtually indistinguishable. I still really like Tears of the Kingdom, and it still has enough unique things to make it an enjoyable and largely separate experience. I just think that it would have been so much better if it wasn't built so heavily on top of Breath of the Wild. And that's all I've got to say. Kind of a depressing video, I guess. Hopefully the next one will be something a little more upbeat or positive, but I don't know yet. I don't plan that far ahead.